The Super Bowl isn't just big, it's the biggest stage in advertising. Last year, Super Bowl 59 averaged a new record, 127.7 million viewers. That kind of attention is rare, fleeting, and expensive. But winning here isn't about just one ad, one viral moment, or one night of buzz. The brands that succeed plan long before kickoff, using consumer insights to guide bold, brave creative, and connect it to campaigns that stretch across pregame, in-game, and post-game moments. I'm Natalie Kelly, and today on Inside Insights, I'm joined by two absolute marketing legends who know what it takes to win on the biggest advertising stage. Mark Kirkham, CMO of PepsiCo Beverages US, and Greg Guidotti, CMO of the Ferrara Candy Company. We'll dive into what it actually means to win with consumers during the Super Bowl, how insights give teams the confidence to be bold, and why the best Super Bowl advertising is built not as a single spot, but as a system. Mark and Greg, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks,
Thank
Nat.
you very much. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the intro. It has to be corrected. We have one legend, which is Kirkham, and then his friend Greg Guidotti. That's the CMO of the Ferrara Candy Company. So
He used to be my boss, so I think I'll take that as much love.
Oh, well, that actually brings me to my very first question because I was going to ask both of you a quick intro, and then I'd love to find out how you actually got to know each other.
Yeah, sure. Mark Kirkham, I'm the CMO of PepsiCo Beverages in the US. Been with the company 15 years. Used to be the CMO of our international business, only in beverages. So I spent my whole career in beverages. And before I came to PepsiCo 15 years ago, I worked at kind of Gillette P&G, kind of came out of the Gillette side with this guy, with Greg Guidotti. And we worked on the battery category. Exciting and powerful brands like Duracell, and learned a lot about brand building, and spent a lot of time internationally, both personally and on different businesses throughout the last 25 years. So excited to be here and excited to spend time with my good friend and partner over the other side.
yeah, and my story is I actually started, right out of undergrad. I was in advertising for a bit, and then moved over to the client, which was starting at Kraft. Kraft was on the East Coast, and then I decided to leave Kraft and join Gillette, and that's when Kirkham and I got to work together. And honestly, we've talked a bit, but there's an element of like every brand you touch is something that you hold in your heart. And we talk about bleeding copper and black. I refer to Mark Kirkham as one of my BFAMs. Like we have a whole group of our Duracell crew that are brothers from another mother. It's very funny. So you have that history. We have that history together. And again, we were both working in global roles, and then, Mark went to Pepsi to do stuff internationally. And now here I went from a global role to an international role, for Duracell batteries. And then I actually returned to Kraft, and I was at Kraft, then became Kraft Heinz. And then I've been here at Ferrara as the CMO for about 7 years. And it's like, it really is. I've been looking forward to this discussion. Kirkham has been an incredible colleague, and a great friend through those years. And it's amazing when, you just pick up, with Pepsi actually having an office here in the old post office, we get to see each other every once in a while, and it's just an honor. And because the guy has been on a rocket ship, with incredible talent. And it's, great to have a conversation here and talking about the Super Bowl.
That's awesome. I do have to ask a follow-up question there. So you guys both were in global roles. Where were you in the world?
We were, yeah, Bethel, Connecticut. Where, if you were in a global role, where else would you be but Bethel, Connecticut?
No, I joined right at the time of the Gillette P&G acquisition and moved down to Connecticut from Boston. So we worked on batteries for my 5 years in internet global, and then last year in the US before jumping ship to come over here. So yeah, we had a great time.
Yeah, it was a great time. And I think we won't spend too much time on this, but I mean, marketing batteries is one of the hardest jobs you can ever have. And we talked about it because like it's not a thing when you have other things, when you work in food or something like that, you could expand consumption. With batteries, you can't. You just will load the pantry because it's only predicated on the devices that you have. So it makes you more talented. And I think we leveraged, distinctive assets that you would never realize, but you feel. I mean, there's the 1/3 copper, 2/3 black. in terms of a battery. There's the sound, like the slam and sound on that front. So, in the and the tone, like ding, 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 like those kind of things. And there's a history and a story to each one of those elements. So I feel like, I grew exponentially as a marketer, in the global work that we did. And then, spending almost 3 years in Singapore across Asia was great. Just made me a better marketer as I came back to Kraft and now Ferrara.
Wow, that's so interesting. I love the history and hearing you guys talk about the brand and where you overlap. That's really a great background. So, I have a question for you, Mark. The industry treats the Super Bowl like a single play. I heard you talk about this last year on the ground on a panel that you were on in New Orleans. And a lot of folks talk afterward about which ad was the winner, which brand stole the spotlight, which spot topped all these various rankings. But you guys are managing campaigns that start months before kickoff, sometimes years. So, how do you think about success differently than the scoreboard the industry uses? And what does winning actually mean from your perspective when it comes to the work you do in Super Bowl advertising?
Well, I think winning very clearly is growing the business and growing the brand. Super Bowl is one moment in time. It's an important, it's a special moment, but you can't get distracted on what the ultimate goal is. Whether it's educating consumer about your product, whether it's building an equity, whether it's launching something. And so I think that's one of the biggest watch outs. Winning at Super Bowl ultimately is growing your business, growing your brand, and there are many examples where winning was just an ad meter or just a social engagement or this or that. And again, depending on the objectives of a brand, that might be an objective. I'm not saying we all aren't trying to make an impact at Super Bowl, but ultimately, if we're not moving the business forward, then the time, money, and investment actually don't actually help really drive the overall equity and the metrics of the brand. And if I use last year as an example with Mountain Dew, our ultimate goal was to kind of maintain the momentum of Mountain Dew Baja Blast. I can tell you that at the end of the year, we were still growing share. I can tell you at the end of the year, we're still growing volume. I can tell you that our integrated programming around Super Bowl drove significant multi-channel and DoorDash, et cetera, programming that allowed us to grow the business and drive trial and penetration. And that's the ultimate objective. Was it a great ad? Of course it was. It was a fun ad. We made Seal a Seal, and it was top 25 in both Ad Week and Ad Age. So that's great. But if I got all that and I wasn't moving the needle on the business, then it wouldn't have been successful.
It's really well said, because I think it's absolutely right. And I think we never have, the Super Bowl is a platform. It's a place where where you guarantee eyes. And with the world being so fragmented, it's the only place where you have that opportunity. So our only parameters are like Kirkham said, like, we want to grow household penetration. That is the whole reason why we got into the Super Bowl. We want to grow share. We want to build displays in advance of this in this element. So, like, those are our KPIs in terms of our, going in or getting there. And I think it's a really interesting, um it's a really interesting element, because different businesses have different objectives, but everybody knows that this is one of the last platforms where you could almost guarantee an audience. So what you do with that audience is predicated on what you want to do as a business and a brand. And for Nerds, it has been about accelerating our household penetration year on year, growing share and growing the business. And, like, this is a business that was almost 7 years ago, a very nominal business. And now, we're on the cusp of being over $1 billion brand at retail.
That's incredible. That's incredible impact in such a short time. Um, and that reminds me, Greg, I wanted to ask you about this topic. So Ferrara has some of the most beloved candy brands in the country, like Nerds and Sweet Tarts. When you're building for the Super Bowl, what are the consumer insights that actually move the needle for you? I know you talked about other metrics, but what are you looking to understand about your audience that gives you the confidence that the creative that you're investing in will actually land?
Well, it's interesting, because this element of, as an emotional category, like, candy is an emotional category. It's a treat. There's no sustenance associated with this product. If I'm hungry, it's like, boy, I wish I had some trolley. It's not like that. It's very much a treat. It's very much a reward. And so that plays in nostalgia. So, what we've tried to do with our portfolio is drive relevance to our brands. And I think, bringing new relevance to our brand. So as we think about, what we do as we approach the Super Bowl, we spend a lot of time on social media organically with brand lovers because they are organically there, just connecting with them, and really just connecting at the speed of culture, that kind of stuff. So you will see Lil Wayne loves Nerds Gummy Clusters. We sent him a case of Nerds Gummy Clusters, and he wrote a song, and Nerds is in that song. Now, that song might not be playable for all families, but it's a great song. It talks about that brand love. So I'm rambling a little bit, but this element of like we spend a lot of time connecting with culture. And then when it comes to our spot, we're making sure that we've got clear parameters. If our objective is to grow household penetration, we want to make sure that we have breakthrough and attributes. So, attributes to our brand, and they recognize that it broke through. I saw it. I recognize that it's Nerds. I recognize that it's Nerds Gummy Clusters. These elements. And then as you go to, as we start working, you get into the season, we're making sure that we're placing displays and having display fixtures at every channel, at every pillar. So whether it be convenience stores or mass merchants or club, or even e-commerce, making sure we've got a presence. So our success there is the Super Bowl is, won before the ad ever is run when it comes to that kind of like the in-store. And I think, you just look at Kirkham and what Pepsi does is better than anybody else in the world. And so we aspire to to be that good. But the fact is, year on year, we've increased our amounts of our display, not only quantity, but quality of placement. And then after it is just tracking the KPIs of household penetration, sales share, and the like.
Wow, I mean, I remember last year landing in the airport in New Orleans and seeing both of your brands with pretty amazing activations at the airport. And, the Mountain Dew, I think I even sent you a picture, Mark, of the signage.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, you did.
'Cause it was right after I landed from Boston, right
Wow.
outside my gate. I was like, "Well, there they are. There's Seal, and there all of this is right there in front of me." And then, I also took a bunch of pictures with your activation, Greg, because there was a giant Nerds Gummy cluster in the airport on my way to
Yeah.
baggage. So, it's really impressive to see how you guys manage all of that from social online to offline, to really connect that, advertising and the whole campaign all through all those different touch points. So really excited to see what you have in store this year. So I have a question for you both next. So with the stakes being this high and millions of dollars on the line for the ad spots on the night, I'd love if you could talk to me a little bit about the creative process. So where does consumer evidence come in and where do you rely on instinct and creative bravery and kind of say, you know what, we're not going to listen to what the consumers are saying on this one. We believe really confidently in our ideas here. How do you balance those 2 things when you're making the final creative decisions? And also, how would you describe the pressure of doing that as you go into the Super Bowl?
I think the first thing is the pressure is what you make of it.
Yes.
Um, Ultimately, yes, it's a big media buy, but it's an opportunity. I actually think it's more the excitement than it is the pressure. It's an opportunity to reinforce or amplify or introduce something to, one of the largest audience at a single given point in time. And as you also pointed out earlier, it's not just about those 30 seconds. It's about everything you surround it with. The process to me, I think where this gets back to your original question, I think brands sometimes forget why they're doing it
Yeah.
and what is the ultimate goal, and therefore that affects the process. I will tell you for every one of our Super Bowl ads, there is always a clear business objective and brand objective at the beginning. So if you go back Baja Blast, we had a growing business. We want to maintain the momentum after year one launch, which we also launched at the Super Bowl. We had an awareness challenge and we had a what flavor is it challenge. That's why it was called Kiss from a Lime. We wanted people to know that Baja Blast is lime flavored. So we had to build from that premise. Now, that didn't automatically get us to Seal as a Seal. That was a creative articulation, but I think you need to start with that and you need to decomp. And for us, typically it starts sometime, call it August, September of a given year. Hey, are we going to do Super Bowl? And by the way, the answer isn't always yes. The answer is, well, show me why we should. Um, and I can tell you the last 2 years sitting in front of my CEO and presenting an idea, if I wasn't confident and in both cases laughing my butt off, I would not have gotten the green light to spend the money and do that. And I think that's important because it is a business decision. It's a pretty significant one-time investment at a point in time. Now, for us too, it also is part of our overall strategy with the NFL we've been a longtime partner. There's a lot more that we are able to do because of our partnership. But ultimately, it has to start with clear business strategy, clear creative idea, and plans to amplify that beyond just the 30-second spot. And I think we've done a really good job this year as we go into it. I think in past years, we've learned a lot. And I think sometimes that is, hey, do you use talent? Do you not? Because then you extend rights and there's other
Mm.
complexities, but you need to give yourself time. I can tell you too many brands rush this process and the outputs aren't as great. Maybe they get lucky, but most don't. So I think giving yourself, 4 to 6 months to really think it through, anchor in a business decision, and make sure you truly believe in it. If everyone on the team is not truly, truly in love with the idea, then I don't think you're going to be as successful as you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, Kirkham is spot on. I mean, the fact is it starts with that business objective and brand objective. Can the Super Bowl help with that? I think the stakes are what you make them. And I think we try to, um, temper the stress because now this is our third year. I would say our first year there was a high level because it was something that Ferrara had never done, not something that none of our brands had ever done. So like the parameters of that were very high, but we said, but we were very, we took the emotion out. What did we learn? What are we going to do better? And I feel like our second iteration, with Shabuzi was a better articulation of Flashdance in year one. And then as we come to this third year, I know from a, quantitative, from a qualitative perspective that we've got a better communication. But importantly, it delivers on our business objective. It delivers on our objectives of driving household penetration on this front. It's compelling to the consumer. It has recognition of the brand. It has recognition of the variant of that brand. So it delivers on all that front. And then it's like, okay, how do we make it bigger around that spot on all that front? And again, I never worry about, am I going to be the top 10 or the top 50 or the worst? I know we're not going to be the worst, but I know it's going to win for the business. And that's the only thing that's on anybody's mind here.
Hmm. That's so interesting. I mean, both of you being veteran Super Bowl advertisers now, having been involved in this multiple years in a row, you know, I I'm curious what your thoughts are on some of these brands that like do a one and done and they don't come back and apply those learnings the next year because there are some that show up and then you don't see them again, or and then some show up only for the Super Bowl. It seems you don't see them elsewhere.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what is your business objective. One of the things I always struggle with is, and we've done it, is using the Super Bowl as a launch platform. Now, again, back to the earlier point, you need to make sure you have the in-store support or the channel support, regardless of your business. And so, as a launch platform, that's a lot riskier, right? So you got to make sure that if someone learns about your brand, they can pick up the phone, they can go to a store, they can go online, whatever. Um, I actually think it's better as a kind of reframe or amplification or kind of richer embedded storytelling than launch, because of the fact that you start with a different base. You're starting with a base and maybe a smaller base than some big brands, but that's the reason why, Budweiser's been doing the Clydesdales forever. That's why you've seen some consistency, but the freshness still can come through. So you may be telling a story that might be similar to a story of the past, but how is it new? How is it different? And then I think the other thing is, how do you leverage beyond just that 30-second to really tell the story? When we grew up, you waited till that moment
Yeah.
to see the Super Bowl ad. Now we're all going to tease, we're all going to drop, we're going to amplify, and we're going to extend beyond. But that moment is still precious.
Yeah.
And so what you do in that moment is still very important. So I think this idea of like how you think about the role of Super Bowl in your communication strategy is just as important as the creative itself.
Right. Yeah, I think again, it is this element. It's like, yeah, years and years ago, you'd drop a spot in the Super Bowl and that was it. So much is done before, so much is done around, and but it all needs to build and amplify to that level of crescendo. So you're pre, during, post, that elements, but there's so many more opportunities. And again, based on your business objective, based on what you want to do, you might choose not to tease. You might choose not to release. We're talking about stuff, and so we're like it's become a lot more dynamic and a lot more interesting in that whole platform because there's so many things that you want to make sure work, and particularly for businesses like ours, in terms of the, consumer packaged goods. You want to make sure you've got full distribution across all your channels before you talk about anything. That might not be the case for financial services or something. You don't know. It really does depend, but I think it's quite it is almost it's most dynamic for I feel, and again, a total bias with consumer packaged goods, because you have customer partners, you got distributors, you have all these partners that you want to make sure they're all working on that front. So when the consumer starts seeing it, they're seeing it everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting to think about the pre-released ads now because only a fraction of consumers will see that compared to on the night. But I love that idea of building the crescendo and using this as a moment to amplify in many cases, because if you don't have that base of awareness, it could be wasteful to, you know. Yeah, that makes total sense. So Mark, I had a question for you. You talked about the Mountain Dew ad from last year, but in general, when brands like Pepsi, Poppy, or Mountain Dew show up at the Super Bowl, you're not just creating a single ad for a massive moment of brand visibility. As we talked about, you're connecting it to that broader brand story that runs throughout the year. So, as you're developing your 2026 Super Bowl ads, which we can't wait to see, how do you make sure the Super Bowl doesn't feel like a disconnected moment, but part of something bigger?
Yeah, and I think what's critical is you start with, well, what is your overall business objective for the brand? So, as you know, we're going to do a Pepsi Zero halftime show ad, and if you think about Pepsi Zero Sugar has two main things we want to communicate. One is our great taste, and two is continuing to drive the momentum and the broad awareness of the brand. People know Pepsi, but Pepsi Zero Sugar as a subset is much smaller than our core. And so for us to really reinforce taste and broader awareness, we need to do something that sparks either reappraisal or that sparks curiosity. Yes, it will entertain. And I think that is how we kind of frame out the creative strategy, because ultimately a Pepsi ad will be remembered as a Pepsi ad. But if a Pepsi Zero Sugar ad is remembered for challenging convention, for reinforcing or maybe questioning someone's taste preference, those are the types of things I think ultimately are tied to the broader business strategy. As you saw this past year in 2025, we reran the Pepsi Taste Challenge. We reran the Pepsi Taste Challenge. We hit over 25 cities. We did over several 100,000 samples with consumers. We gave out over 1 million products, and we won everywhere we went versus our competition. And the taste superiority, 66% of all those who tried it picked Pepsi Zero Sugar over the competition. How do I tell that story? What's a fun, creative way to celebrate that? And so that's the anchor point for, hey, should we do Super Bowl? How do we get this taste message out in a bold, creative, fun, a little bit cheeky way that will actually show interest? And then next time someone's at the store, because there'll be plenty of displays, as Greg said out there, they'll try it and they'll try it again. And because it tastes so good, they'll buy more. And so that kind of foundation is what you need to think about, from brief all the way to execution. But let's be honest, it's Super Bowl. So it can't just be another taste ad, another product centric ad. It has to connect with culture. It has to, essentially excite people to want to get up off the couch and go buy something or challenge their preconceived notions. And so that is the core of what we're trying to do this year. And again, last year it was about understanding taste and awareness. We relaunched Pepsi Zero on taste several years ago. We've got Poppy running its third ad ever, again, trying to drive broader awareness and celebrate the culture of the brand. So there are just so many different reasons why you start the Super Bowl thinking process, but ultimately it will anchor back into kind of continuing on a trajectory of driving specific, business and brand KPIs.
Yeah, and I think just to build on what Kirkham was saying there, this we've hammered the point about business objectives and brand objectives. It also has to connect with the positioning of the product. What's that product's point of differentiation? What's its tone? What's its manner? Because like not all brands fit there. And now it's interesting. Nerds has fit there, and I think there could be opportunities for other brands in over the horizon. But for us, we're at a much smaller scale than my friend Kirkham. But I think this element of making it's got to be right in a lot of ways. And I think the only stakes is like, you got to make sure that you, as you're staying true to your brand, you find this way to break through. Culturally feels like the way in a lot of ways. And whether that includes a talent or doesn't include a talent, it all, again, it depends on business, brand objectives and the positioning of that product in and of itself. And I think we're lucky with Nerds to have not only those Nerds characters that everybody knows from its launch in 1983, but the gummy character we established with Nerds Gummy Clusters. So having a personality, breaking through, breaking into culture on that kind of front.
Yeah, that's a great point, Greg. I happen to notice you have in the background quite a few different brands represented here, and so do you, Mark. So I'm trying to count how many brands do we each have represented here, but it's quite a lot.
I mean, Kirkham represents all kinds of incredible blue chip businesses. I mean, we humbly have around over 20 brands US, which is great. I mean, it's like they're great businesses. Anything from my favorite growing up, Atomic Fireball, to Lemonhead, to Laffy Taffy, to Jelly Belly, to Trolley. And if I want it all, Kirkham.
There you go.
This is the Kirkham Guidotti special.
That
I'm
right
not
there,
kidding.
that's real.
This is real. And this is something that we connected together maybe a year ago. And then we got our teams doing this, and they did an excellent job. And I would say, I think it was a success for Pepsi. For us, it not only drove a lot of trial for the Trolley brand, refreshing the Trolley brand, but our base business is growing volume in like 9.6%. And then in value, maybe 11%. And so like the news on something that's really relevant, really connected, Trolley and Mountain Dew from a positioning perspective, really, I just saw this down on my desk, Kirkham, but it was like, honestly, we had a discussion as friends and colleagues a year ago, and this came to market just this past, I don't know,
September, yeah.
as an example.
Yeah.
I love that example. In fact, I saw you guys talking about it on social media, and that's how I knew you were connected,
Yeah.
which is so cool. And that was a limited edition that was only available for just a short amount of time, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Stay tuned. Good ideas can continue to
Yeah.
grow, and I think
Oh,
that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, I
that
think that's exactly what makes it fun. When you find those kind of points of connection. I mean, it very much, Trolley very much being a brand about, pushing the boundaries and this kind of element. It really played into that, all that Mountain Dew is doing, which is maybe my favorite brand.
It is. Yeah, I got a picture of him from the '80s drinking Dew, so
No, it's like
it's
I've been a Mountain Dew guy like my whole life.
well, I love that collaboration because those 2
Yeah.
brands do seem to go very well together. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Greg, I have another question for you.
Yeah.
When you think about the Super Bowl, it's not just about the TV spot, as we've discussed. The best campaigns really do extend across social, across retail, across experiential, all the different touch points where consumers actually engage with brands. So as you look at what Ferrara is building for this year,
Yeah.
how do you think about the Super Bowl as a system, not just a single ad? What makes the difference between a great spot and a campaign that actually sticks with consumers after the game ends?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's almost, again, like we spend a lot of time like, how are we as an emotional brand connecting with culture? And I think, whether you saw it, I mean, I think 2 years ago was maybe that time where Nerds really broke through with culture. And we had a couple pretty prime articles, but more importantly, we had consumers dressing up themselves and their animals like Nerds Gummy Clusters, which is just so that kind of like, when you have that kind of cultural connection, you have something. So as we approach this year, this element of, getting into the football season and having some, we did a program with Overtime, and we did some work with Cooper DeJean, and he did some taste elements, like not only hardcore, but we launched a couple limited time offers, which are kind of football themed, a berry punch rush or a cherry lemonade blitz. So like we have, adjacent products, which are very close to the core to drive trial. And then and then on the social front, you're connecting with football players. We've done something with some Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders as well, which is painful for me because I'm a New York Football Giants fan, and Kirkham's we'll call them the Commanders now, but I think he's pretty worried because with us getting Harbaugh, as the Giants coach. I mean, the Commanders are going to go down to the bottom of the NFC East, but I digress. But I think this element, this is just like that connecting with culture and catch, and like we talk like this, like we're friends. We've known each other. We talk sports. That's some of the vernacular which actually consumers connect on, and that's what we're leveraging with Nerds, whether it be with players, cheerleaders. So as it approaches to to the fans and the games, and then like that's how it really plays up to the spot itself.
Well, I mean, if it helps, I sponsor every team in the NFC, so I win either way, right? So,
Yeah.
um,
The
but
fact of the matter, if we're gonna go toe to toe, my friend is doing amazing work across the board.
yeah,
And it's like, and honestly, I mean, I say it with my heart because we had that opportunity to work together, but the guy is, he's got like he's got the brands in his heart, and that's how we grew up. And to just live that, it makes every conversation we have on anything great, but the level at which he's operating is amazing.
I love this. This is a love fest for the brands, for the products, for
Yeah.
the people. That's awesome. And I will say Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, like, I don't think you can go wrong there because 'cause they're beloved nationally. So
I think
it's not the
it's
football players.
again, it's finding that it's yeah, it's finding that connection. It's something very special about that. I didn't mean to discredit because I think it's great. And I think everybody it's very well recognized. And candidly, we always whoever we connect with, they are previously brands of, fans of the brand. And I think it's very easy to find fans of our brand. And that's the thing. You don't force yourself into it.
That's so true. Yeah, I love seeing those costumes and everything. It's so fun. Okay, so we are gonna move into our lightning round next. And I would love to ask you a few quick hitting consumer insights related questions. Are you both ready?
let's do it.
Okay,
Sure.
let's do it. So this question is for you both. What's one thing brands overthink about Super Bowl advertising that should actually be simpler?
Sizzle versus steak. If you go for the sizzle, like focus on the steak. Keep it simple. Like if you try to chase the dream, you get nowhere.
I'm gonna build off simplicity. I have a mantra I believe in, which is make simple special. And the reality is, the simpler your idea, the more special you can make it. I think the biggest thing people get in, they get worried about, they get stressed about, they overthink is how do I make my Super Bowl ad be the most amazing Super Bowl ad versus how do I make my idea, my simple idea, really special at that amazing moment in time. So the keep it simple is probably the number one goal, I would say.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is like I could care less what other businesses or brands are doing. I care about what our brand is doing and how we're going to connect with the consumer. I think that's and I think that is keep make it simple special is a great moniker. My is this element of like when you start chasing the sizzle, you get nowhere. Just go for the steak.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great advice, and I think, it's a good reminder that simple doesn't have to mean mundane. It can be special,
Doesn't
and
mean
it can
creatively
be
boring.
sizzle
Yeah,
and
I think simple is not creatively boring or not interesting. I mean, if your idea is simple, you can add amazing creativity.
yeah, and it's hard to make complex ideas simple, so I think that's awesome when we see that in action. Okay, my next question, what's the biggest myth about Super Bowl advertising that you wish would go away?
That you need celebrities to make a great Super Bowl ad.
Yeah.
Um,
Agreed.
and by the way, I'm guilty of it. But
Yeah.
I think if you really break it down, the in today's world, the simplicity of a great idea can outweigh the celebrity of a great actor, musician, athlete. And now, I do think there's benefits to it. Don't get me wrong. I've done it myself. But I'll tell you, in our ad this year, the only celebrity is the director, and he won an Oscar. Even at that, because, you know, there might be some perceived celebrity. There might be some, celebrity storytelling aspect of what we're doing. But do I need to add a celebrity to this idea? No. In some cases, if that celebrity can authentically amplify your core idea, then hell yes, you should leverage them. But I think that's the biggest myth. Like you don't need a celebrity to make a great Super Bowl ad.
No, it's again, like I think it's important that you connect with culture. It's important that your brand breaks through. Celebrity can work, celebrity might not work. I think the biggest myth is, like breakthrough. Like let's break through. If we break through, well, if breakthrough doesn't get to conversion, how many times have you said, I saw that ad, who was it for? There's no misattribution to any Nerds ad. And I think I might be driving more. We as a team might be driving more fundamentals in terms of consumption moment, in terms of branding and these kind of things in here. But we have a sole purpose, a brand objective, and a business objective in terms of these elements. So you need it to come across, and for your brand to get credit. So I think people get distracted by breakthrough. What? Let's have Mark Kirkham be the guy in this ad.
Well, I think the data actually proves you both correct because the data that, from Zappi, when we look at this, shows
Yeah.
on average that the brands that include or the ads that include celebrities don't necessarily perform any better. It really depends on the articulation, what they are trying to achieve. But the other thing is the brand recall is not as high for a lot of those celeb-based ads. It
Yeah.
really depends on the, many other aspects, not just do I have a celebrity or
Yeah,
not.
the celebrity needs to be in service of the brand and the message. That's really it. And if it's about the celebrity, not in service of the brand or the message, like, what are you doing, guys?
Well, a lot of times they will, the consumer will say, "Oh, I remember that ad with celebrity X," but they don't remember which brand it was. And then
Yep.
it's worse when you have the same celebrity in multiple ads, then they really get confused. So,
Yep.
yeah. Well, that's great. So another question that I had for both of you is, what's your all-time favorite Super Bowl ad, and why does it stick with you?
I think there's no one, and I'm not gonna just pick our ads because, like, I'm a student of the craft, and so I love to see great work from lots of different people. I do that being said, PepsiCo as a company has put some of the best, Super Bowl ads out there over the last 20, 30 years. Ones that I think resonate with me, and they happen to be PepsiCo brands, are all the Crash the Super Bowl spots.
Which one was that?
Crash
Kirkham?
the Super Bowl, all the Doritos Crash the Super Bowl spots. I mean,
Yeah.
when that idea, came up, well over a decade ago, it was new, it was unique, it was a different approach to creating ads, and the actual work is phenomenal.
Yeah, for
Young
sure.
directors who came up and made amazing stories and did some pretty provocative creative, is fantastic. I mean, I think Pepsi in our past did a great job of using celebrity in Super Bowl to celebrate the brand, whether it's Britney or what have you. But actually, if I look more recently, I really like what Uber Eats is doing. I really like what Instacart's doing. I really like what DoorDash did. And why? Because they celebrated their core business, which is delivering stuff. They brought the NFL in an authentic way around the big game, as either a moment or part of their story, like Uber Eats. They brought many of our brands along, so there's an added benefit. So, Puppy Monkey Baby was in one. We Mountain Dew was in DoorDash's. So, I think it's changing because we're using our brands to tell stories about consumer behavior, and ultimately, as the world has evolved in kind of the different channels and the different brands that are relevant to those channels, the storytelling becomes more complicated, right? And so for DoorDash or Instacart last year to tell stories about their business and what they do by using brands or brand mascots to tell their story, it's just brilliant. So I will give Kofi and the DoorDash team and the Instacart teams tons of credit for all the work that they've done to make a service creatively interesting and partnering with brands to do it. So, and then I guess it would go without saying, if you said as a kid growing up, the Clydesdales will always be a favorite. So,
Yeah.
the ABI team, I got to give them credit. Like, just sticking with something so simple, so special, and so consistent. That's magic.
And something to be expected, and you look forward to it. And that element in terms of that, the Clydesdales are a classic, and you look forward to, how great that can be. I think it was interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was saying about the frogs, Budweiser, and I honestly went to Was Up, and I liked Was Up. I'm just chit-chatting to Bud because it got to the like how guys connected over a Budweiser, regardless of where they are, what they do. So that was one that I always thought was an interesting one. But Puppy Monkey Baby is a close one too. It's a crazy cuckoo, but but again, but as I think about, like, I really like what Kirkham was saying, because, like, as a student of the craft, or you've been in this your whole, you're really trying to pick apart, what do you think their objective was? What are they doing there? Uber did a great job. But I think was up for me. It's just that element that just it broke through. There was just something cool about it, which is very relevant to. So I guess Budweiser gets some good points in this one.
They do. They get some
Yeah.
points. But
Yeah.
if I knew you're gonna bring up Puppy Monkey Baby, I would have grabbed Puppy Monkey Baby out of the closet because the actual doll is around the corner here. And
Yeah.
we loaned it to Instacart for
Yeah.
that. So, like, it was
Fun.
missing for weeks. So, it's the
Oh,
Instacart like, I don't know what
But the
happened. There
fact
was
that it
3
was an
copies
Instacart
lost.
speaks to the fact that it was classic. Yeah, I think
Yes.
that element but had some staying power because it was just so crazy in a good.
I love the collaboration between brands, and the Instacart is definitely memorable, that ad from last year, because of all the different brand mascots and teaming up, but it also just it's like that's what people see when they open their pantry or open their fridge
Mhm.
or, in their household, like, it's highly relatable, and it makes the consumer feel like, "Oh, I'm seen, I'm reflected, I'm, mirrored," and, there's a lot of great things there, so I hope we see more fun collaborations from both of you on the product side with the, Trolley Mountain Dew collabs and and others with the advertisers, that you partner with and team up with. That's really, really fun. So, okay, if you could give only one piece of advice to a CMO doing their first Super Bowl, what would it be?
I mean, I think the element is like there's this element of like we brought it up like this is marketing in totality is an art and a science. And I think, but by the fact when you get to this Super Bowl stage, like you're probably got some experience here. You know, kind of what your brand is about. Like trust your gut, trust your team, straight true to your brand. And I think, and if I were to just plagiarize off Kirkham, this element of simple being magic, I think that like it's having that in your head. You don't need to like this and this, and then we have this crazy bomb, and then this car jumps here. It's like it's this element of like I think it's very much about trust your gut, trust your team, stay true to your brand.
This is probably the biggest audience you'll ever one time put a message in front of. So don't worry about the audience, worry about your message. Because I think too often people get stressed because it is 127 million people at one time. The reality is each one of those is a single person looking and watching that screen, looking to be entertained, to be informed. And if you get across your idea, you get across your message, and you're confident about it both creatively and strategically, you win. Whether or not you get number 1 on the ad meter or you end up number 10, if there's enough people out there who understood your brand message, who were entertained or intrigued by the story you told in 30 seconds, you win. And being too worried about the expense or the exposure or what people will say after, what I worry about is, will it drive sales?
Yeah,
Will it
I
build
think that's the
community?
that's the point because I think
That
I don't.
to me is the most important thing, and I
Yeah,
think that's the biggest advice I give. Is like, focus on the message, focus on the brand benefit or whatever story you're telling. Don't worry about the stage. It's like you tell any musician before a big
uh,
opening gig, just go out there and do your thing, and I think
yeah.
that if you know your craft, you know your story, then you'll be successful.
If you know what your goals are, what do you want to do? Because I go harken back to our first Nerd Super Bowl ad, which I think was amazing, and I think it broke through. But most importantly, it grew our hustle penetration by 6 points. 6 points, which is and I don't know where we ended up on the ad meter. I remember the 6 points.
That's great. That's great. A good reminder of keeping the most important goal in mind and not overly fixating on rankings. That's wonderful. Well, I want to thank both of you. This wraps up this episode of Inside Insights. A huge thank you to Mark Kirkham, CMO of PepsiCo Beverages US, and Greg Guidotti, CMO of Ferrara Candy Company, for joining us and sharing how the world's biggest brands think about the world's biggest stage. If you'd like to connect with Mark or Greg, you'll find links to their LinkedIn profiles in the show notes or at insideinsightspod.com. If you haven't subscribed yet and you want a regular stream of research and insights knowledge in your podcast feed, hit that subscribe button in your podcast app or follow us on YouTube. Okay, that's all for today. Until next time, thank you.
How are you?